Hello everyone. So in this example, we're going to walk through Excel to apply some of the formulas in order to calculate the inventories like beginning inventory, ending inventory, back order, and various costs associated with the aggregate plan, right? So we are working with the same example that we did in class using the manual approach for tractor manufacturer, right? Okay, so in row number 2, we are given with the monthly demand from April to September, right? From row number 4 to 6, we have available capacity with the regular permanent workforce, with temporary workforce, as well as overtime. So what I always do, I always consolidate my capacity. Yes, we know at this point we don't have any temporary or the overtime workers, right? But if you use this approach, you can apply the similar mechanism when it comes to using temporary and the permanent workers. So I'm going to call it total capacity, which is simply sum of all the available capacity. So available from regular permanent workforce, temporary, and the overtime. Okay, so let's apply this across. Yeah, this number is going to be same as the permanent, right? Because all these numbers are 0 at the moment, right? So just in case, if these values change, right? So you're not dealing with multiple cells, but we have consolidated all the capacity for each month in one particular cell, right? You're given with the beginning inventory. So from here, we can calculate the ending inventory. So if you remember the formula, so that's going to be the total capacity, which is 600 plus the beginning inventory and minus the demand for the particular period, right? So I have this as 350 units, right? Okay, so as you remember from our in-class example, when we reached July and August, we were having negative inventories, right? And what will happen when you have negative inventories? We are equating those cells to 0, and we are using those as back order, right? So what we can do here is actually we can modify this slightly. So I can use a conditional statement here. So I will say if the ending inventory, so we are calculating ending inventory using the total capacity plus the beginning inventory minus the demand, right? If this is greater than or equals to 0, so if we have a positive number or we have 0 inventories, then we want to keep the same value, so which is B7 plus B9, which means the capacity plus the beginning inventory minus B2, the forecast, right? Otherwise, if we have a negative number, right? If your inventories are coming as, let's say, minus 350, minus 250, we want to have 0 for the ending inventory, right? So in this case, yes, beginning inventory is positive. Sorry, the ending inventory is positive. So we have 350 here, and from here we can calculate the average. So that's average of beginning and inventory and ending inventory, right? Which is coming as 300 here. And we know that for the first period, there's no cumulative back order. So we have that as 0, right? So when we are in May, so we have the beginning inventory as 350, so which is coming from here, right, from the previous period. So I can say this is equals to B10, right? So which is representing the previous period instead of manually typing these numbers, right? So as I always say, try to automate your Excel as much as possible, right? Okay, so from here, let's calculate the ending inventory for a month of May. Let's apply that across. But we need to slightly modify for second month, right? Remember that we have this value here as cumulative back order, right? So we should be fulfilling any back orders. So I'm going to call it, so let me just double click on this formula. So we have C7, which is the total production, C9 plus C9, which is the beginning inventory, minus C2, which is the demand for May, and minus the back order from the previous month. So I have back order value as B12, right? So we don't have any back order at the moment, but we want to put this as part of the equation, right? Similarly, we'll modify this particular part. So it's going to C7 plus C9 minus C2 minus B12, right? Okay. Also, otherwise, if this value is negative, so we're going to keep it as 0, right? So let's do that. And from here, the average, that will not change, right? So that's 375. So we're going to use a very similar approach for the back orders what we did for the ending inventory, but the formula is going to be a little bit different. So we're going to have, if we have total capacity plus beginning inventory, so which is 350, minus actual demand, right, minus the cumulative back order or the back order from the previous period is less than equals to 0, right? So there's only a back order when you have negative inventories, right? So if that's the case, I'm going to represent this as back order. So I'm going to say -1 multiplied by C7 plus C9 minus C2 minus B12, right? And otherwise there's no back order if this value is positive, right? So back order only happens when your ending inventory is negative number, right? So let's apply that. So at the moment we don't have any back order, right? So again, look into formula carefully. This is just total opposite of what we did for the ending inventory, right? So there's a back order in case your ending inventories are less than 0, right? Why we are multiplying it by -1? Because remember, inventories, we don't represent them as negative number. So any negative inventory is going to be back order. So that's why we're converting this negative value to a positive number by multiplying it by -1, right? Okay. So now let's apply these across. So this is what you have, right, with the manual calculations. So as we are hitting the month of July, we are start up using the inventories, right? And we start building up back orders from here, right? Okay. So again, I will highly recommend to automate your Excel document. It makes your life a lot easier, right? So at first point, you may find out the formulas, setting up these formulas are a bit challenging, but once you have a hang of these things, it is very easy, right? Then the cost is straightforward, right? So for the permanent workforce, we are paying them $213.33, and we have the permanent capacity as 600, right? So that will give me the cost for permanent workforce. At the moment, for the temporary workforce, we don't have anybody who's working us on temporary basis, right? So that's going to be 0. Similarly, there's no overtime, so we're going to get that $320 per unit, and the overtime is in B6, so that's 0.2. Hiring cost, we are not doing any hiring, so I'm going to make that 0 here. Inventory cost is $10 each, and we are having average inventories for month of April in B11, so that will give me the inventory cost. So it's costing us $160 per back order, and we have this cost, sorry, the number of back orders in B12, right? So let's apply these across. So that will give us the total cost for each month in row number 20, right? Similarly, you can add all these costs from here. So let's say sum of all the wages across all the months, right? And let's add these up. So that's coming the cost, the total cost for this aggregate plan is this number, right? So which is around 1.1 million, right? So that's the total cost for the aggregate plan where the back orders are allowed, and we are not using any temporary workforce, we are not using any overtime, right? So you can use similar approach for plan number 2, right? But in plan number 2, we are allowed to have temporary workers, right? And I'm going to have temporary workers for these 2 months here, right? So at this point, you can see all these the values are adjusted itself, right? Because we have automated all of these cells, right? But the only thing is you just need to simply look into the hiring cost, right? So that's kind of wrong here. So this should be all 0, right? Instead of 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, right? Okay, so I think that's when we're applying these values across. I think we have made a mistake at that point. But in this case, you will end up calculating the hiring cost for very first month, right? So $60 multiplied by 600 here, right? Okay, this is only possible, this automation, once you have all these if statements in place, right? So then you're simply playing with one Excel sheet to generate different scenarios, right? Okay, so to put it back, what we had for the previous plan, right? Give it a go for plan number 2. If you have any questions, please feel free to reach me out. Thank you.